Thank you. If you can, let's go ahead and find our seats so we can get you home earlier than later. My name is Aaron Lyles, Executive Director of CAMPLEX. Hello and welcome. This evening we have with us the master planning team that was hired coincidentally in the same day that they hired me. So I think we're at 11 months-ish. And so it's been a fascinating process to be able to be a part of a master planning effort while you're a new employee onboarding into a project like this. I've learned a lot. I've heard a lot. There's lots of opinions about CAMPLEX. I'm sure everybody in the room has an opinion about CAMPLEX. Everything from this was the fairgrounds, never should have been any more than the fairgrounds, and darn it, I'm going to live and die on that cross, to we don't do enough. Wyoming Center wasn't built big enough. We need to do bigger, more, just lots and lots of differing opinions. The challenge with differing opinions and the challenge of political process as a new guy looking at all this has been that for every era that big decisions were made, different promises were made. And so CAMPLEX has been meaningfully something different to so many different people. Looking here at the Fair Board Chairman as one example. Fair is an integral part of probably why you're here tonight. The unique issue that presents is that because it's different for everyone, there's no real clear vision as to what it's supposed to be. Everybody, we do a lot to accommodate many, many things. And in business, that's a really classic recipe for not making revenue, right? You water yourself out. It's difficult to be efficient in any areas. And ultimately, that's CAMPLEX. We have aging facilities, 30, 40 years of deferred maintenance in some cases. No real plan for what we're going to do to address that. So the master planners, they've been phenomenal. They've worked through very independently. I'll let them tout their own horns about the projects that they've worked on, their professional expertise. But what I can say that has been beautiful about this process is that they have really been true to the effort of an independent analysis, not shaded by local politics, not through the political lenses of promises made. They're just looking at sort of the cold hard facts of what are the people who use our facility need and want based on their own words, and then figuring out if those needs and wants can pencil out. And so they have some pretty interesting things that they'll share with you this evening. From my end, what I would ask everybody in the room, help us find the common vision. Is it a $100 million arena? I don't know. That's up to the people of this community to decide. Certainly not a guy that's only been here for 11 months. Absent a very clear vision of what this is and where it needs to go, all the forces are competing against each other. Every election, there's a different influence, and the problems of rusty buildings never get solved. So with that being the charge in front of us, I've had a phenomenal first almost year. Thank you for allowing me to be the executive director of something that has become a true passion for me. Hopefully you can hear my sincerity in that I think I've had one day off in a year, and I love every second of it. Thank you. And with that, what's the plan? Sorry, I'm going to steal your thunder right back. We will have a question and answer session at the very end. We'd ask that you sort of limit your comments and feedback at that time. It's a Zoom meeting, so they can't hear you unless you're on a microphone, and try to limit it to about 3 minutes per comment, just so we can respect the group as a whole. But we'll be flexible. Thanks.
Is that on? Can you hear me? I think I'm coming through the speakers, right? So, okay. I'm Todd Gralla. We're going to kind of start at the beginning again. I know a number of you have been to a couple public meetings where we've kind of getting interim updates on where we were in this study process. I'm Todd Gralla, Populous, been kind of leading this effort on behalf of the team. We also have Jamie Tarver here with us with Dow, and Mark Hines is also from Dow. He's not here with us tonight, but Dow is our local partner. They're civil engineers, so they know a lot about utilities infrastructure conditions here in the community and also on the park. And then Joel Feldman with CSL. who's been looking at market analysis, also the financial feasibility of what we're proposing. So as Mark mentioned, or Aaron mentioned, we have a lot of experience with projects like this. And I think that's important for you to recognize. Populous has done over 200 similar campuses around the country and also internationally that deal with multi-use facilities, rodeo, horse racing, very similar facilities. And a lot of them you guys probably have been to around the country through the years. Likewise, with Joel, we've done a number of those projects together, with Joel kind of looking at the market analysis, and we're looking at planning and physical facilities, and then he's doing an assessment of whether or not building those facilities will be viable for that community. And we're working for a lot of the major brands in the industry that Aaron's operating within. Calgary Stampede, Texas State Fair, the facilities in Oklahoma City, and so on. So we really do understand the industry and the challenges faced here at CAMPLEX, and looking for the correct path forward. CSL, as I mentioned, we've done quite a bit with CSL over the past decade, probably at least 36 projects that are similar to this. But CSL itself has done about 1,000 multi-use facilities of various types that are entertainment, public assembly, and fairgrounds expo type projects. So you'll find their resume to be quite extensive related to this project. So we come to with a lot of background. One particular project that a lot of you probably drive by often is the ranch in Larimer County down in Loveland, Colorado, right on I-25, where we've helped them get their tax extension done back in 2019. We've been working towards a lot of infrastructure redevelopment there over the past 2 years. They've just completed a new indoor arena there, as well as some renovations in their livestock and horse barns. And we're about to embark upon a P3 project there, which is this whole corner of the ranch, which is public-private development, which is the ice arena, ice center, 2 hotels, and an expo center. So that'll be starting design and construction sometime next summer. So quite a bit of experience, not only with similar projects, but projects of the same scale and projects in this area as well. I'm going to let Joel kind of talk about our study process as we began this work. And again, some of you have heard this a couple of times already, but we feel it's important to kind of go from ground zero all the way to what our findings have been currently.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you all for having us back here again. My name is Joel Feldman. I represent Convention Sports and Leisure International, as Todd kind of outlined. We are market consultants, economic, and the business side of this process. We're not operators, we're not developers. We don't have a vested interest in any of these projects that we study. I've been with the company for over 16 years now, and we don't get invested in these financially. We are invested in these studies emotionally, to understand and work on behalf of the community, to understand what potential opportunities exist with investment moving forward, and if there is really a path for an investment moving forward. There are a number of studies that we've come back to our clients and said, no, it really doesn't make sense. We've run the numbers. It's about 18% of the studies that we've done over the years that don't have a valid market to pursue additional investment. So when we do come back with recommendations, when we do come back with projections for these event facilities, it's important that our name is what we trade on, that our projections are accurate, and these are things that we stand by with our track record. The study process that we were asked to take upon here to do the market assessment for the CAMPLEX multi-events facilities complex was a very detailed one that we've done many, many times over the years. It involved a detailed look at the local market in terms of what infrastructure exists here today, both at the complex and throughout the community, in terms of population, demographics, socioeconomic conditions, to hotel inventory. If we're going to be bringing people in from outside of the area, do we have the hotel rooms and the capacity to accommodate them? Do we have the infrastructure like restaurants and retail establishments to appreciate any potential economic benefit? What other assets exist in the community so that we're not creating competition by investing into this complex and robbing Peter to pay Paul? We want to make sure that any recommendations, anything that we have is going to be complementary to the community. We took a look at the historical operations at CAMPLEX, very detailed dive into event levels, utilization profiles on each individual space, attendance levels to be able to project, what historically has done and to understand what potential opportunities exist moving forward. We reviewed competitive facilities throughout the regional marketplace, the state and regional marketplace, as well as comparable venues against which to learn important lessons in terms of operations, event levels, financial implications. We reviewed industry trends and characteristics of a variety of different event types that all could potentially go into CAMPLEX. And then the biggest piece of the research that we did was the market outreach, starting with community stakeholder conversations with over 30 community representatives to get a lay of the land and understand what the issues are relative to CAMPLEX. Reaching out to over 400 online community representatives to respond to an online survey to provide some context into what CAMPLEX means to them and opportunities that we see here moving forward. Reached out to over 40 current and past users of the facility to understand why is it that they come back? Will they keep coming back? And what do we need to do in order to not only retain, but to grow their business? And then over 40 survey respondents of potential new user groups that historically have not been coming to Campbell County to understand why and what opportunities we can attract with improvements and what improvements would be needed to the CAMPLEX facilities or within Campbell County in order to be able to retain these and attract these events. Overall, there were over 500 annual events that were represented by the market research and outreach that we conducted during this process. So I'm going to quickly recap from our meeting back in, I believe it was May, where we did the primary market research that led into the master plan designs that Populous and Dowell have developed here. Just real quickly, in terms of the overall conditions, nearly 500,000 people within a 3-hour drive of CAMPLEX. Median household income is very strong in this area. The hotel inventory also very strong, both in terms of the quantity and the quality of rooms. A very diverse corporate base, and also a retail destination. So there's a lot of economic activity that is going on here, and investment into a public event facility such as CAMPLEX has the opportunity to increase that based off of the infrastructure in the community. Next, we took a look at the historical operations of CAMPLEX facilities in terms of the total number of annual events in some of the most recent years of operations. Right around 350 to 370 annual events, including ag, equestrian livestock, dirt floor related events, flat floor association events, trade shows, conferences, conventions, entertainment events, practices, SMERF, which is the social, military, educational, religious, fraternal events. Those are oftentimes community-based events, things that are really helping to drive special interests within the community. Special events such as the Family Motor Coach Association or some big events that don't typically happen on an annual basis. And then both youth and amateur sports and some of the other sports activities that are going on in the complex. Overall, we did a very detailed analysis by space in terms of the occupancy on each space. When we look at this from an event facility standpoint, typically we're looking for something that is falling between 40 and 70% occupancy within the complex for optimized operations of that space. That's because we need to have time to set up and tear down. We need to have time to make repairs. We need to have time to let staff rest and recuperate. But it also has to do with when events typically look to utilize the space. So when we're seeing spaces like the Wyoming Center at over 70% in 2 of the 3 halls, when we're seeing Central Pavilion and East Pavilion at pretty significant utilization numbers on an annual basis, that sparks off some alarm bells that we may be losing out on significant business, whether it's with adding additional event days from some of our events today, or bringing in new events because we just don't have dates available. We delve down even further into the monthly occupancy. And when you see this analysis, it's even more stark how little access, how little availability to event space that we have on a month-to-month basis. There's some downtimes during the year, but many more that are exceeding that 70% threshold, suggesting that there's a lot of business, a lot of meat that's left on the bone that we're not being able to accommodate in terms of event activity in this facility. Took a look at competitive facilities throughout the regional market, try to understand the events that are going on in these spaces and what level of competition that we have in terms of the type and size of space that they offer, the number of enclosed arenas, the number of stalls and the RV hookups really identifies the capacity of some of these other facilities. We have a competitive advantage here at CAMPLEX in terms of the event spaces that we currently offer. But one of the challenges that we have is if we don't reinvest in those facilities moving forward, we do have competition in the area that could potentially start bringing these away. And furthermore, when you start looking on a national scale, if we're looking at things like the National High School Finals Rodeo, Little Britches, or other big national events, the competition grows even larger. As I alluded to earlier, the market research process that we undertook, very detailed dive into over 500 events and activities that represents the market for potential future opportunities at CAMPLEX if improvements are made. Among current and past users, it was interesting to note that the likelihood of coming back to CAMPLEX without any changes is pretty significant. Almost 94% of respondents indicated that, yeah, they'd very likely, if not definitely, come back. But that number went up to 100% when we asked them the same question if improvements were made, that they would be coming back to CAMPLEX. As we started getting into things about what they would be able to do, they'd be able to come more frequently, they'd be able to grow their events and activities, they'd be able to use more facilities if they were available to them. There were a lot of different comments that were generated in terms of opportunities to grow events and activities, bringing more attendees, bringing more utilization, and enhancing the overall experience of the people that are using the facilities here at CAMPLEX with the improvements that needed to be made. So what are those improvements? Some of the questions that we asked included what space needed the most attention here moving forward. And among the responses that we got, the biggest area of need was among the equestrian livestock space and the stall barn space. Almost 50% of respondents indicated that we were lacking in both of those facilities and needed more and greater access to those to be able to continue using the space and to grow their events moving forward. But also importantly, there are other events that require additional exhibit space, ballroom or banquet space. Opportunities for other indoor amateur sports is another significant market segment that indicated some opportunities here for improvements at CAMPLEX. So when we started taking a look at some of the outside user groups that haven't historically come here, we were able to connect with 20 different organizations that produce equestrian, livestock, ag-related dirt floor events and activities that represent over 250 annual events. About 74% of them indicated that they would like to come to CAMPLEX at some point in the future if we had facilities capable of accommodating their events, and that they haven't historically been able to come here because we don't have the space, we don't have the dates available during the times that they're looking to come. That represents events on average attracting about 500 people, seating capacity in a complex right around 200, needing about 100 RV hookups, and daily attendance for about 830 people, which would indicate there's a pretty significant economic impact from these events if we were able to attract them to Campbell County. We also reached out to a number of flat floor conventions, trade shows, corporate event producers to understand from their standpoint if we were to improve or create greater access to space at CAMPLEX, what the likelihood of them bringing in future events would be. It was a little bit smaller positive response rate, right around 57%, but still a significant potential opportunity. If we were to develop another 20,000 square feet of exhibition space, we could bring in as many as 850 attendees in the majority of these events and generate about 140 hotel room nights, indicating a pretty significant economic impact. Those are 140 people that are spending 2 or 3 days in the market, $200 a night for the hotel rooms. $60 to $90 for food a day, transportation, entertainment, experiencing the market, and having the opportunity to come back in the future now that they realize the benefits of visiting Campbell County and Gillette, Wyoming. So overall, some of the conclusions that we reached based off of the market research that we conducted was that CAMPLEX is truly an important community asset. If we want to maintain this asset, though, it's critical to continue to invest in the facility, because the feedback that we got is that there are some impacts to the operations of the complex that have been going on for the past 20 years that it's starting to show its wear. When we've got competition throughout the region, when we've got competition throughout the country, if we want to continue to host these events from outside of the area, if we want to continue to accommodate our local community users, making sure that the facility is kept up to industry standards is an important piece to it. We also want to establish a brand identity. What is CAMPLEX, and how do we best position it to accommodate both the local and the non-local demand? That's I think an important question that we're looking to address here tonight and through these conversations moving forward. Retaining and growing existing event activity. How do we best approach that from a facility investment standpoint, operationally, and from a capital standpoint? We did note that there's a strong demand for event space in the Wyoming Center. One of the challenges that we have is that Spirit Hall is being used for ice most of the year. If we're able to open that up by creating an opportunity by relocating that ice to another facility to accommodate that need in the community for the NA3HL program and the youth hockey program, having additional event space at Wyoming Center could create some significant opportunities year round. We also noted a significant level of demand for equestrian and livestock space, as we noted before. The horse stalls and outdoor penning space, RV hookups are a competitive advantage that we have here at CAMPLEX. How do we better leverage that with enhanced, improved show rings, riding rings, warm-up space, and event space for the equestrian, livestock, and ag-related dirt floor events that are occurring throughout the region? There's also a significant potential to attract one or more national events, including the National High School Finals Rodeo, among others, that could be a recurring driver of both economic and financial impacts for this complex. And how can we best accommodate that need without overstepping the needs of the rest of the community and not building the church for Easter Sunday? How do we identify the needs of those events so we can accommodate them moving forward and in a fiscally responsible way? Did note that there's some more limited to moderate convention and conference trade show event space demand. As this market continues to grow, as this facility continues to evolve, we would see that that's a potential opportunity moving forward if we continue to invest into that segment, particularly taking a look at things like providing on-site hotel space to accommodate those groups that are coming in from outside of the area. There are opportunities with improving the horse racing facilities here at the complex from a community standpoint, from an engagement standpoint, from experiencing that critical piece of entertainment in our community. Providing access in an enhanced way seemed to be a need within CAMPLEX facilities. The Campbell County Fair is also an important asset. How can we continue to improve our facilities to better allow for production of that important annual event? And then certainly from a development standpoint, what other ancillary developments can occur throughout the thousands of acres of space that we have around CAMPLEX to help not only enhance the experience of people that are coming to the facility, whether from a local or a non-local standpoint, but also to help drive the economic presence within the community. So overall, our program recommendations, first and foremost, would be infrastructure improvements and making sure as we move forward that we retain what we've developed over the past few years and in terms of events and activities. Creating that programming space for signature events like the High School Finals Rodeo. How can we make sure to address their needs and attract them in moving forward with the significant financial and economic benefits that they can provide? Relocating the ice complex to free up that space in Wyoming Center. Updating existing event space in Central and East Pavilions and horse racing facilities. to accommodate the demand that exists here today, and as we would continue to see move forward in future years, and then investigating potential private sector partnership development opportunities to enhance the overall economics and viability, sustainability of this complex. And with that, turn it back over to Todd to walk you through some of the designs that we're recommending.
Thanks, Joel. So concurrent with Joel, when he was meeting with some of our key users, we were also doing the same thing because we wanted to understand from a physical facility standpoint what they really needed moving forward, the deficiencies with existing facilities, how their events might grow. We're also looking for kind of similarities between users. For example, when we have horse racing come onto the campus, they like to have about 700 stalls, but we know we can't build 700 stalls just for horse racing. It's not feasible. So I've got to figure out a strategy in our master plan to use those 700 stalls throughout the year when the horse racing is not here, right? Or if horse racing goes away, does it still make sense to have those 700? And comparatively, the high school rodeo needs over 2,000, about 2,200. So how does that 700 fit into that mix? And are they in a place that's usable for them, that's convenient? So at that same time, Joel was kind of going through his stakeholder meetings. We were doing the same thing with some key users. And we also, everyone knows that the rodeo is kind of a golden egg out there that's potential for us. And I don't want to lose sight of that, but I also don't want to imply in any way that they're driving this boat, because we actually attended their winter meetings earlier this year. I had private one-on-one meeting with them to understand kind of what their goal was moving forward to 2030 related to their facility requirements. We listened to them, took a lot of notes, didn't provide any information of our own at the time. We just wanted to take their information and kind of see how it fit in with our other needs here on the campus. And as we move forward with the planning concepts, we definitely did take that into consideration. But some of their facility requirements for their 2030 kind of mandatory requirements that they've established honestly just don't work here. It's too much facility for our market. We couldn't justify, for example, 2 indoor climate controlled arenas of 5,000 seats. There's no way to sell that in this market. So it's not in the master plan. But what we did was we came up with our best possible solution that Joel thought fit within the market. And we went back to high school rodeo and said, this is the best we can probably do that gets close to what you would like to have. Is this acceptable? And I think we all know at this point that it is acceptable to them. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the master plan components. I'm really going to focus on primarily the new stuff. So what you see here is the proposed master plan. And there are really kind of like 3 major areas of the plan that we'll focus on. And I'll go into showing a little bit on the buildings as well. But the first is up in the northwest corner. This is basically, it's a multi-use livestock agriculture complex, entertainment, sports, all kinds of things can happen there. Then, as Joel mentioned, there's down below the racetrack, south of the racetrack, the Wyoming Center and this proposed new ice center. And then as we move to the east side, this new replaced Wrangler Arena concept, as well as these barns, the existing barns that will be replaced, as well as some developed in the infield. The campus is really, in our mind, kind of zoned, where we're taking the existing livestock area, and those are kind of our, frankly, worst assets on the campus currently. Most of the barns are shed row barns. We have a lot of flooding problems back there. They're not suitable for year-round use if we wanted to do livestock and equestrian events further into the winter and earlier in the spring. The arenas are too small, the indoor arenas. The East Pavilion is in pretty poor shape. which is our indoor dirt arena. It's also rather small, as well as the facilities within it, such as bathrooms and concessions, are pretty poor. So there was a lot of focus on kind of the livestock facilities and bringing our facilities up to par with our peers in the industry. There's, as Joel mentioned, the Central Pavilion and East Pavilion are the two of the most highly utilized buildings on this campus. They are very old buildings. They are very tired, but they are good assets. We think that moving forward, when we really look at how do we continue to embrace and engage the community in all the events that they want to hold here, as well as bring in the bigger events that Joel talked about, we need to keep those assets in service, but they need to be improved. So we have improvement plans for the Central and East Pavilions. The ice center, as Joel mentioned, currently our ice is in the east side, east third of the Wyoming Center. The Wyoming Center, the two halls on the west, are currently the two heaviest utilized spaces on this CAMPLEX campus. They're up in the mid-70s% of utilization. We know that there's demand for additional space, and Joel mentioned about 20,000 square feet. So ideally, we would like to recover that flat floor event space from that ice and make necessary repairs and improvements to resume flat floor events in there as it was designed for. If we do that, that ice program needs to go somewhere, either on this campus or off this campus. Our proposal is that it possibly could go on this campus at this location where the Wrangler arenas currently reside. And it would be a 2-sheet complex, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on that as well. So when we displace the Wrangler arenas, which are also pretty heavily utilized, but mostly for local events, so the income is very low. The facilities aren't very good. They need a lot of improvement. The concept is to move those further to the east, giving them their own 2 points of entry, own parking, possibly utilize a covered arena as well as an outdoor arena, and be able to sort of isolate that outside of major events happening in the core of the campus. That way, for that kind of everyday public access, they're not trying to compete with traffic and parking and everything going on within the core of the campus. It's easier for them to get to that space and utilize it more freely and more economically than trying to utilize these new and improved buildings in the core. So I'm going to jump into that livestock equestrian campus part. This is in the location of the current barns and arenas north of Central and East Pavilion. What we're proposing is a tandem arena layout. Some of you know that a tandem arena layout is desirable by high school rodeo. That's what you currently have in the infield of the track. Although all of the venues today are outdoor that they go to around the country. They would like to have those indoor. We realized that from the market analysis that we can't afford to build and operate 2 fully indoor arenas. One 5,000 seat arena, which is this arena right here. Yes, there is a market for it, both from livestock equestrian, but also flat floor entertainment like concerts and other performance events. But there's not a supportable market for a second arena that's identical to that. So what we're proposing is a covered arena with 2,200 seats that's adjacent to the main arena. At some point in the future, it could be enclosed and conditioned if demand was there for it. But right now, we don't believe it is. Each of those arenas would have a covered warm-up that's connected then back to these 2 livestock barns. These are enclosed barns, which would give this complex the ability to essentially operate year-round independent of weather. If they can get here, they can have their event. Beyond that, we have some shed row barns that are kind of, summer season barns, but we've got about 800 stalls combined in these 2 already. And the average show is going to be 690 to the low 700s typically for a horse show. So these 2 barns would cover that typical event. When we had bigger events, we would utilize these shed row barns, which are also very convenient to this arena complex. But during racing season, the dash line actually indicates a temporary security perimeter that will be put in place. And these barns will be utilized by the racehorses. When we look at the floor plan of those two arenas, again, the arena on the right is the one that's fully enclosed. The arena on the left is an open air, just covered arena. They share a main entrance. They share a lot of services in terms of ticketing and a main entry gallery as you go into grand stairs and escalators to get upstairs. But all of this lower portion right here is all public space. There's a lot of service and storage and support and concessions along underneath the seating. But as we get towards the back sides of these and connecting both ends of both arenas, that's all service. So moving livestock and equipment, the behind the scenes stuff during rodeos and during performances. Once we go upstairs, they do have separate concourses where people can go upstairs, and then they can potentially mingle between the two arenas. These are glass walls with doors. They would share concessions. So we had dual-sided concessions that work both ways to try to be as efficient as possible. But this is, again, outdoor space, and this is fully indoor space. So it will be a really cool experience, particularly during a big event, a major horse show or major rodeo, to be able to go from arena to arena very easily. But again, we can close down and just operate this one arena for a concert or a circus or a tractor pull, whatever it is, and do an entirely different event on this other side. So it's a very unique building. There's not really one quite like it. There are a lot of outdoor arenas that are tandem, but nothing quite like this. And here's just a few example images of kind of the way we anticipate that space looking from some similar arenas that we've designed and built. And this is kind of example of the covered arena portion of that. So again, open air. We probably have fabric windscreens to protect and extend our season a little bit on that covered arena. Single-sided seating deck, nice covered makeup arenas at each one of those arenas. And although architecture really isn't where we are right now in this process, everything you see is conceptual. Nothing's been designed, but we wanted to kind of start thinking about the massing of these buildings. We needed to provide something in terms of being able to understand square footages, finishes, and be able to generate cost estimates. So that's why we go into those conceptual floor plans and we start looking at potential architecture and renderings. It's just so we can generate costs. So a few renderings of what that might look like. Again, they are very big buildings, and this is actually part of that upper concourse that then looks back down into the indoor arena. That can be vendor area and so on. That's the common entry. There is on the other arena, similar space, but since it's open air, it's an open air concourse with an overlook down into that public plaza. The multi-use barns are just that. We've, like I mentioned, there's two of them. We've got about 640 stalls total. All of this equipment that you see would be temporary equipment. The design concept behind these barns is that they have no columns within them. They're clear, column-free open space. They are fully enclosed barns. We anticipate they would be heated and ventilated. We've end loaded all of the services like bathrooms, concessions, offices, animal wash areas, so that this space in the core can be set up in a myriad of different ways. There may not be any animal pens or any horse stalls at all. It may be set up for a car auction or some type of other auction. They can tear this down and set it up in any kind of configuration. In fact, your fair can actually operate all of their animal operations in one of these buildings. So having two will give them opportunity for growth. Depending on the show that's occurring, we could have stalls on one side and an indoor arena on the other side. So they're very flexible buildings. Depending on what happens with horse show business, rodeo business, these buildings can do a lot of things besides animals. And we think that's very important moving forward. And here's kind of an example of what those barns might look like inside, with horse stalls, with an arena set up, with livestock pens or ties, what wash areas look like, just examples. And I took this from our aerial, but it's kind of a zoomed in area of the two arenas. So the indoor arena, covered arena, the two covered warm-ups, and then the two 320 stall barns back there. And then here you see the central and east pavilions. So this would have, we'll get to this a little later, Jamie will, but one important thing is the development of plazas and green space connections through your campus. That's all been figured into our master plan, as well as our cost moving forward and our phasing. So next, central and east. We realized that these buildings are pretty tired, but they're really heavily utilized. They're utilized for a really wide variety of things, daddy-daughter dance, wedding receptions. A lot of all your dirt events are currently happening in this arena. This is your biggest dirt arena. This is more of your dance and trade show space. Both spaces are very tired. They also have really a deficiency in services because the only concessions and bathroom is just in this core right here. So what we're proposing is that we add true entrances. There's really no good sense of entry to this building, either at this end or anywhere along this wall. There's just a bunch of doors, but no real sense of entry. So trying to work on the architecture of this building a little bit, add bathrooms which are needed to meet current codes, new concessions, and also a couple of meeting spaces or breakout spaces that could double as producer offices or vendor offices, and then a full renovation of these spaces. So really down to the metal structure and envelope, right? So insulation, HVAC, new lighting, new electrical, new interior finishes, and then adding some additional bathrooms and storage at this end. Storage is something that's really greatly needed in that space in order for it to be really flexible. Same thing goes with the dirt arena, complete renovation inside, new insulation, lighting, PA, electric, new seating, new dirt arena. So it's really like you're getting two brand new buildings for a fraction of the cost, because we have a renovation scheme to get us, up to par with these new buildings. And kind of just some precedent images of, the entry that I'm talking about, renovated dirt arena, entry on the inside, the breakout room space, and the renovated expo side of that building. And we have a few renderings of kind of potentially what that might look like, that we use basically just for generating cost estimates. Next thing is the Wrangler Arena complex. It's currently south of the tracks. It's pretty heavily utilized, but on Joel's percentages, it only shows at 20 because 20% of the time it's paid for, it generates revenue. A lot of the time it's used and doesn't generate revenue, which is great. It's part of the mission for CAMPLEX to serve the needs of the public and to engage the public in the events that they want to pursue here. We think that's a very important aspect of CAMPLEX, but it's in a really bad location. It competes for parking. When we have the high school rodeo, it's impossible to use it. When we attract other major events like we are planning on attracting, it's going to be increasingly difficult for people to use that location, that facility in that location. And it also really needs to be improved. So we don't think that's the right place to make that investment south of the tracks. We think that relocating that further east on the campus would be better, so they have easier public access from public streets, their own parking area, trailer parking, area to put livestock, potentially build one of the arenas as a covered arena with concessions, bathrooms, and some offices, and the second as an outdoor arena to really enhance that kind of public usage aspect of CAMPLEX. So precedent images of kind of what that looks like from some of our other projects. outdoor covered grandstands for outdoor arenas, covered arena, as well as kind of maybe looking at doing some comfort stations, some bathrooms and covered kind of tie up areas for the horses. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the horse racing component and how we kind of thought about how it needs to fit in with the greater campus. As I mentioned earlier, they would like to have about 700 to 800 stalls for the racehorses. We can't just build 700 or 800 stalls for horse racing. They also have to serve other purposes. That's why, as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of looking at putting a portion of those racing stabling closer to the arenas so that they can really be utilized pretty heavily. When we have major events, they're just across the street from those two new arenas. So we've got about, I think, 300 stalls up there. And then we've got another 400 that's planned for the infield. To make that infield really usable, to really gain back that space outside of racing season, we need to be able to get in there more reliably. And we know in working with horse racing around the country and talking with the operators here, the practicality of driving heavy vehicles across the racetrack just is not real. Safety is a great concern. Mortality of the racehorses is a great concern if we want to continue the horse racing here. They need to protect that surface. So the only way to really utilize this heavily is to have tunnel access for vehicles into that infield. And fortunately, we do have some pretty favorable grades out on the outside of this turn 3 and 4 here, where we can almost enter at this lower grade and build a tunnel through to the infield, ramping up here. That allows us to build these stalls, have some parking areas in these 3 locations. And then as we move forward and have the 2 new arenas, potentially reconfigure the 2 arenas that are in that infield so they're a little bit more usable there in tandem configuration. So we'd look at improving announcer stand and bathroom facilities and reconfiguring those 2 arenas in the infield. Also, as part of this work, because of what we're building and the hard surfaces, we probably have to take a portion of that infield for some drainage retention as well. So we've anticipated that. To get from easily from these stalls to the other arenas, whether it's the East Pavilion or the 2 new arenas, really would require a horse tunnel right here. So we've looked at that. We put that in the budget. That's a potential if we want to utilize these interior stalls more easily. Otherwise, they have to go around this way, which isn't too bad, but we do have this as an option to make it a little bit more easy. Also related to the racing, and we've talked to the racing operators, and we understand that this isn't just a public investment that needs to be made. This is a public-private. There needs to be some private money invested in this. But to continue horse racing, if we want it to stay, if we want it to grow, they do need some permanent facilities that they currently don't have. They don't have a paddock. They don't have permanent jockeys facilities. And those are really important facilities. They need offices, jock facilities. They need silks room. They need a medical room. They need a place where they can eat if they're here all day. And they need the paddock stalls and walking ring. So this is a pretty typical design we use at other racetracks. That's what we've put in the plan just for a costing exercise. This is kind of sort of what it looks like. It's this building back here plus the walking area with some built plaza around it at the end of the grandstand that would look into that. So it would enhance that racing experience. It would enhance that business. But we realize this isn't just part of a public capital cost. There would have to be private money invested in this because that racing is a private business. And finally, to the ice center. So we think it's really critical to get ice out of the Wyoming Center. That extra 20,000 square feet of space is vital to capture a lot of the business that Joel has noted that is out there. either from existing producers or new events. So we've spent quite a bit of time with the ice hockey group. Kind of what do you need? Is one indoor sheet, one covered sheet adequate that could be seasonal? And the answer is, and Joel actually looked at the hockey market himself, is that moving forward, 2 sheets of ice is viable here in this community. It would allow us to do more than just have our hockey team and youth hockey program. It would allow us the potential to start hosting some tournaments with teams coming in, which is very difficult right now. It would provide better facilities for the teams. It would provide us the ability to have more seating, better variety of seating, potentially a club space or restaurant space that overlook the ice. There is a lot of potential for hockey here, and working with them, this was our resulting program. It's a pretty compact building for 2 sheets, but it does seem to work pretty well. And this is what we have used for our cost estimating purposes. So this is the ground level, public entering here. This is where like hockey camp or hockey school would enter into the 2nd sheet. All of our back of house, so ice making, Zamboni, all that stuff is back here. We've got team locker rooms and offices, officials locker rooms, and lower level seating on both the north end and the east end or west end. And then ground level, we've got concessions and bathrooms along this concourse. Upper level concourse, we have some club spaces blocked out, kind of the way they block out currently in the Wyoming Center. The full seating deck, as you can see, that's the main seating deck, and then a smaller seating deck at the end with upper concourse bathrooms, concessions, and that potential club or restaurant space. So a very nice asset for the community. And again, whether it goes on this campus or somewhere else, likely to happen and is needed. And some just example images of kind of what we based our design on and also our costing. And potential rendering of what it might look like. So I'm going to let, a big part of this is about site infrastructure improvements. So I'm going to let Jamie talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, good evening. I see lots of familiar faces here. Glad to see that. And I know CAMPLEX has meant a lot to my family and to many of us in our community. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to work on this project. As Todd said, we were the local civil engineering consultant. And what we did, we can go to that next. Oh, you gave me the slide here. We'll go to the next slide. So we did a full site assessment of the CAMPLEX and looked at what utilities and infrastructure we have available. And we also looked at how it's situated in our community and how it performs from an access standpoint and circulation standpoint. And so this first image, we're going to talk about the parking and the circulation here. With the master plan, we are replacing some of the facilities, some of the RV campgrounds and some of the parking areas, which we then needed to relocate. And so the green areas that you see are new flex parking. One of the things CAMPLEX is known for is having an abundant number of RV spaces, probably some of the best in the country, and we wanted to continue that. And so we wanted to find the most efficient way to provide those RV spaces. And so we chose to do that with a kind of cross parking flex space. So when they're not being used for RV spaces, they can be used for parking spaces. Say when we have a large concert or something of that nature, those parking areas will be able to be used for vehicles and then also for RV parking spaces for those types of events. And so that's what you see in green there. And then the yellow highlighted areas are additional parking around the new facilities. Up there around the new arenas, you see we do need an order of magnitude of parking to support those events there. And so we've added some of that and just the logistics of the producers that need to access that space. And then the orange highlighted area is some parking that could be designated for a potential hotel to be located on the site. And On the east side of the facility, we also considered the parking and access for those new facilities over here. Along with the parking and access, we need those core infrastructure components to support these new structures. And generally, the CAMPLEX is developed on the kind of the southwest corner and the south side of the area because of the grade. It sewers naturally to the wastewater treatment plant. We haven't seen a lot of development on the north side of that because of the sewer challenges. So we would be developing on the north side of that slope, and again, add the water, sewer, stormwater collection facilities, and the blue highlighted areas are planned detention facilities. But CAMPLEX in general is built on very good infrastructure, has a great foundation. We did look at the condition of some of that infrastructure and have put some thought and funding in there to continue to keep those components up to date and current. It needs to be built on a strong foundation of infrastructure. So now we'll move on to probably what most people are going to notice and see when they come to CAMPLEX, and that is, again, the circulation here. The entrances, the sense of entry when you come to CAMPLEX. We looked at how people come to our facility, how that in a big event like the high school finals, how does check-in work, and does it flow well? If not, what can we do to make it flow better? And so with that, we did add an access on the north side of the facility on Highway 51. And that is where the majority of that first entrance check-in parking would come, and it would flow a lot better and more efficiently through the site. And it will also flow better with a looped road. So as I said, we have a great foundation with some really good paved roads, and we would continue that around the northwest corner of the site and along the north part and loop back around down to Box Elder. So the circulation within the site is important, so people don't have to leave the site to utilize different facilities around the CAMPLEX. The yellow areas are the entrances, and we would also have another primary entrance off Fox Park Road. We would envision at some point in the future that that would be improved to a paved road and be utilized for that more community use of that replaced Wrangler Arena. The pink areas are our secondary pathways, and our green areas are the primary pathways. So when we did our site assessment, we looked all the way back to the first master plan that was done in the 80s. And a big component of that was kind of a park-like setting, and that it could be utilized for a number of events, multi-use events, and especially the fair. And we didn't have a real sense of a midway or that park-like setting, and some of the inter-complex circulation wasn't real user-friendly. And so we wanted to incorporate some of those components, and we did that by this greenway through the middle of the site, which tied a lot of the main components of the facility together that can be utilized from pedestrians to golf carts when we have those type of events, and also made sure that our vehicle circulation was good. And then the parkways, they would be opportunities to be utilized for a potential exhibit space, interpretive space, and display space. One of the areas that we did, let me see if I got the right pointer here. Right in this area, we looked at a potential site for the museum. We didn't talk a lot about that tonight, but I want to point that out because we do feel like there's some synergy with the potential location of a museum on this site. And whether it's on this site or not, that greenway is a great way to share our community with the visitors of CAMPLEX. So the outdoor museum that you see out there right now, we would envision that you could incorporate a lot of those components throughout this greenway for the visitors to get to know our community and also pull them further into our community. I think that's about it for the site. So one more. Oh, sorry. Yep. Another greenway, a prettier picture of the greenway. And so this gives you a few examples of what that might look like. And you can see here how it ties those major facilities together to make it more user-friendly and provide a better experience for the visitors and the community users of CAMPLEX.
Very good. So, in a nutshell, this is what the concept would look like fully developed. There's probably one component on here that you see that we didn't talk about. So you have the main arena complex back here, Wrangler back over here, potential ice center. This is Wyoming Center where we are, or the Wyoming Center, then where we are. Now, this structure right here, we didn't really talk about. There was some discussion that went on kind of through the market analysis related to a potential hotel, and how really to get the most kind of value out of having an on-site hotel. It really needs to be connected to one of our exhibition meeting space assets that we currently have. So, we kind of looked at different locations, like out here. We looked back further in that area, but really we need to figure out a location that has some street presence. Ideally, it would be also closer to some of these other assets, but them physically connected to at least one of these exposition kind of meeting assets. So this is not in the capital cost. It's not in the development phasing because we don't know when or if it would happen. But just a concept of potentially where that hotel might reside. And it does work pretty well because we could isolate some parking in the core that's related just to that hotel property. But that's a much longer, analysis, as well as kind of trying to look for public-private partners to develop something like that. But this is essentially what that master plan fully developed would look like. So we did take a look at implementation. So in other words, construction phasing and then budgeting based on those phases, as well as kind of the timeline on when those phases would be bid and what the projected cost might be at those times. So essentially we have 3 phases right now. And there is kind of one thing driving that a little bit, in that we would like to have the main arena complex completed sometime in 2029 or 2030. Just because that coincides with the high school rodeo wanting the facilities at that time, the 2 tandem arenas, plus also the letter of understanding that we have with the high school rodeo to move here on a more permanent basis. So in phase 1 is actually a whole lot of what Jamie just went over, because we have to develop supporting infrastructure in order to go in and add these new facilities. There are utility requirements from electric to water to sewer. There are also parking requirements that we need to offset, as well as access requirements we need to make sure are in place so that we can easily and effectively utilize the new buildings when they're built. So there is a whole lot of utility infrastructure, as you saw on Jamie's plans, that go into this loop road. We also have to develop this loop road, which currently doesn't exist, all along the backside or north side of the campus. And initially that would be probably a gravel road while we're doing other construction. We also have to, or need to, develop these areas where we can park RVs and also help support the rodeo through years of construction, because we do have the rodeo coming still. We are going to have ongoing construction if we follow a 3-phase plan, basically for 6 or 7 years at least. And We know we've got, once we dig into adding these buildings right here, we're losing some RVs. So we've got to replace those first. We can't lose assets that we currently have in use. We also need to replace some of the stalls. So we've identified these stalls to be replaced so that when we take these out of service in this location, we can maintain our stall count. We also think that it would be good to probably consider going ahead and kind of taking back that East Hall in the Wyoming Center, because we know there's demand right now for that floor space. So we've put potential new ice center and recovery of the east portion of Wyoming Center in phase 1. And of course, when we trigger the ice center, if that happens, we naturally would have to move the Wrangler Arena complex. So, and then we've got also some maintenance facilities relocated right here, because a lot of the boneyard maintenance storage is currently in this location. So we're basically doing a lot of work in phase 1 related to infrastructure and relocation, rebuilding of assets, so that we can make room for this new arena complex right here. And the phase 1 budget escalated to a 2025 bid. We estimate at about just under $93 million. And when we get to phase 2, again, as I mentioned, the real focus is right here on this major complex of the arenas, livestock barns, warm-up spaces, all of this parking, as well as the redevelopment of creating paved dual use RV and car parking at number 6 right here. This is the big lift of all of the projects that we have in the master plan. Multi-years of construction, probably at least 3 years. And when we look at where that would fall, probably in a best case scenario for bidding, it would be in 2026. So we escalated all of our numbers to 2026. And we projected that phase 3 project to cost just under $158 million. Moving to phase 3, which is sort of a cleanup phase, but it would involve final pavement and a development of the loop road. We'd have replacement of some of our additional barns, shed row barns that need to be replaced. They're by that time will be beyond their life cycle. We'd have some of the greenway improvements that are finished throughout the core of the campus, as well as possibly the improvements to racing and grandstand renovations. And then also we would do Central and East Hall. And the reason they are heavily utilized, and the reason we're waiting until that last phase is that we really need to keep those 2 halls in service while we're building and renovating everything else. We just can't afford to have those out of service for a year or 18 months until we have other facilities to move those events into. So that's the reason those buildings have been kind of reserved till the end of this project. We really need to keep them in service while we're building everything else. So at this time, we'd also finish off all that core parking in this interior area. Potentially at that time, we might have a deal with the developer to come in and do that hotel, possibly. And we'd also make some improvements to the RV hookups out in these green areas on the west side of the campus. So as I mentioned, it's kind of a cleanup phase, but there is quite a bit of important project there. And we had budgeted that to be bid around 2029, probably complete in 2031. And that cost was budgeted at around $26 million. Joel?
So now that we've got kind of the identification of what this could look like and what this could cost, the next question that we wanted to try and tackle is how do we turn this into a math equation? How do we start to try and turn this into, how do we decide whether or not to move forward? What are the implications on if we do move forward? What are the impacts if we don't? So we identified four different scenarios to analyze economically and financially in terms of where do we sit here today if we have our base case, kind of the standard operating procedure that we've seen with CAMPLEX facilities in recent years. A 1A scenario is taking that, but then understanding that the events that have historically come here do realize that infrastructure is starting to fail, that the experience is starting to deteriorate. And if we don't continue to invest into this product and this facility moving forward, we would anticipate seeing not only those events going away, but attendees starting to dwindle and negative impacts, both financially and economically. An example that we were recently studying up in northern Michigan, it's a different project. It was an amateur sports project. A bunch of doctors and lawyers, buddies from college, got together, and they had a bunch of kids that were playing soccer, didn't have a place to practice inside, so they went out and built a brand new synthetic turf field and put a big bubble dome over top of it so that they could practice during the winter months up in mid-Michigan. The facility was great. People loved it. It was rented out regularly. They weren't making a whole ton of money, but they didn't care. They were lawyers and doctors, and they were doing just fine otherwise. They just wanted to be able to give back to the community. After a few years and their kids kind of moved on to college, there was still a new crop of kids coming in, but they started to realize that there were some warts. The turf was starting to wear a little bit. It wasn't as nice of a facility. Other places started to open up. They started seeing fewer people coming out to the soccer complex. More years go by, the parking lot starts to fail. Now anybody trying to get in there or out is dealing with potholes. Well, in order to fix the asphalt, they had to raise rates. Well, now all of a sudden you've got fewer people coming, fewer people using the space, because not only are you charging higher prices, but you don't have the right facilities in place. That's what it's a good lesson to take away from. If we don't continue to invest into these assets, we are going to see people going elsewhere. The other competitive facilities throughout the region, other comparable venues throughout the country that are able to accommodate the equestrian, the livestock events, will still be able to have a community asset. But is this the asset from a community standpoint that we want to get behind? You know, as we looked at industry trends, as we look at the way that these multi-purpose event facilities are moving forward, there's a tremendous focus on hospitality and the experience, from everything like Jamie was talking about with the greenway and the experience as you're driving up and parking and getting access to the space, as the event producers, people that are bringing livestock and horses in, as they're offloading into the stall barns, into the spaces that they're renting out and using for competitions, and as you as in the local community are using for riding space. If those facilities are not high quality, you don't want to continue to be able to come back and use them. You don't want to have that same experience. You're looking for a place that's nice, right? These event producers, functionally, these event attendees are looking for spaces that are progressive, that are moving forward, that are opportunities for them to experience things that they can't get back at home, or they can't get closer to where they live. They're coming here because we've got this added layer of hospitality that attracts and retains these events and attendees moving forward. So in order to be able to do that, we would need to make, there's a baseline set of infrastructure improvements within the complex just to maintain what we have moving forward. It's about around a $67 million investment to make sure that we are able to continue to operate at the levels that we have historically been able to realize here at CAMPLEX. And the third scenario is the full master plan build out with the phased approach. Through our modeling process, we took it out about 12, 13 years to ensure that we had the flow of events going from the spaces that would be under construction to being relocated onto the complex, until new spaces opened, until we were able to fully realize the potential for this master plan, with not only the National High School Finals Rodeo, but the increased size of current and past user groups, and being able to add in additional events that historically have not been able to come to Campbell County to CAMPLEX, because we don't have the space, we don't have the dates available to them. So when we're looking at The first slide that we have up here, and this is where I start to geek out and get all into the numbers. So please bear with me here. As we're looking at the number of events that historically have been here, we're right around 350, 370 events annually. We would, for our base case scenario, we took about the average of that, right around 365 events, utilizing right around 939 days of event spaces here at the complex. The reason that we've got so many events and utilization days is because we've got multiple overlapping events. They're using different spaces throughout the complex on a daily basis or regular basis throughout the year. It's not, there are a number of dark days or a number of days when the space isn't, the complex isn't being used, but there are even more that you have multiple facilities, multiple events coming in here at the same time. So as we looked at, and importantly, as we were looking at it from the master plan standpoint, some of the points that Todd was bringing up earlier about the flexibility of the stall barns, of the outdoor and the indoor arenas having different price points to be able to accommodate the different groups and events, local, non-local, national events, to make sure that we have not only the space, but the right spaces at the right price points to be able to bring these groups in so that it's affordable, it's usable, and it's something that they'll come back for. It's something that ultimately we want to have sustainable over many, many years going forward into the future, because we were looking at it earlier today. What's changed in the past 10 years? Well, we don't know what the next 10 year, 20 years really holds. All we can do is plan for flexibility so that when we get to that point 10 years down the road, we have the ability to be flexible based off of the different events and types of events that would be wanting to come here to Campbell County. With the scenario with the infrastructure improvements, we would anticipate a continued increase of events, just because, again, this is a desirable facility. The opportunities to grow some of the events that historically have been coming here is a real opportunity. But we see the significant jump when we get to the master plan and we have the opportunity to bring in many more significant, particularly ag, equestrian, livestock events, the potential for some additional entertainment, and association flat floor events using Wyoming Center, opening that space up. And certainly from the indoor amateur sports standpoint, being able to bring in some additional events and activities there. We also looked at it from the attendee base. You know, how many people are we going to be attracting into the facility on an annual basis? Historically, it's been somewhere between 130 and 160,000 people a year, resulting in somewhere between 20,000 and 25,000 hotel room nights that are generated to drive economic activity, to drive benefit and spending here in Campbell County. We would anticipate, again, from the base case scenario to the status quo, a significant drop off in attendee days without investing back into our complex, and also a significant drop in hotel room nights and economic impact without that investment into our complex. With the full build out of the master plan, we would see that we would anticipate a significant increase in the economic impact, both from attendee days and the non-local attendance, generating upwards of 50,000 annual hotel room nights that could be generated by bringing in people from outside of the area for things like high school finals rodeo, Little Britches, and other large events, special events that we could attract with the competitive advantage that we have with this complex. Financially, this is an investment. Complexes like this throughout the country typically operate at a deficit, at a subsidy that is supported by the community, because they are community assets and because they are economic drivers. These are things that are benefiting area hotels, restaurants, retail establishments, help enhance the quality of life, help enhance the property values of the places that residents are living, because it provides an asset for entertainment. It provides an asset for experiencing the community, for gathering, for a variety of different elements, both from a community standpoint, but also economically. So when we look at it from the financial operating projections from the master plan standpoint, we would anticipate a larger potential opportunity to generate revenue. There would be a higher operating budget. We'd have much more space to be operating on an annual basis. So there is an additional risk involved with investing in this on an annual basis, but we would certainly anticipate the subsidy that would be required to maintain the facilities moving forward would be about where we're at today. However, and as it shows here, if we were to maintain the status quo and not invest into this complex, we'd anticipate seeing a much bigger subsidy required to operate these complexes, because again, you're having higher utility costs, having higher repair and maintenance costs just to keep the facilities functional, replacing doors, windows, things like that, if we don't invest into the complex. So what does that mean? What if we were to invest into this, what is the return that we would anticipate seeing? And we have a very detailed and nuanced approach to identifying what the potential economic impacts would be for the community. There's a lot of things that we hold constant, things like the spending that would occur from residents that otherwise would be going to restaurants, buying clothes, shopping at stores, consuming entertainment in the area anyway. We do not count that toward the new direct spending. This is all projected to be people coming in from outside of Campbell County that otherwise have no earthly business being here, but for the presence of CAMPLEX. With our base case scenario, as we noted before, there's about 22,000, 23,000 annual hotel room nights that are generated among 160,000 annual attendee days, including about 46,000 non-local attendees, which drives direct spending of approximately $16.6 million into Campbell County on an annual basis, just with what we've got going on right now. With the indirect and induced spending, the respending of those dollars in the community, the total economic impact is somewhere north of $23 million a year that this facility generates on an annual basis. That results in right around $8 million in personal spending, and personal income, and right around just under 300 jobs that are created, not only here at CAMPLEX, but at facilities throughout the county, such as gas stations, restaurants, hotels, retail establishments that people need to serve to be able to accommodate the people that are coming in from outside of the area. And importantly, this results in significant fiscal impacts, including almost $400,000 in annual state sales tax revenue, almost $100,000 in county sales tax revenue, a little north of $123,000 in county lodging tax, another $700 in state lodging tax. We would anticipate a significant drop off under the status quo, and a slight increase with the infrastructure improvements without the master plan. But with the master plan, we would anticipate a pretty significant increase in a stabilized year of operation. So it's going to take a series of ramp up years to build up the business, as events have already committed to other locations, are not the ones that are rushing to try out the new shiny penny on the block and are waiting to see how other people experience the complex before they commit to bringing their event here in the future. But once we reach that year of stabilization, we would anticipate seeing almost a little over $57 million in economic impact on an annual basis, being driven by the events and activities that would be coming into Campbell County on an annual basis, and almost $2 million in total fiscal impacts spread between state and county sales tax and lodging tax. So if we extrapolate that over the course of the next 30 years, which is important to take a look at because it's going to take 10 years to build this out, and then the next 20 years to operate, what truly is the return that we would generate over the next 30 years of this master plan? We're looking at somewhere north of $2 billion in total economic impact over the course of the next 30 years that could help to drive economic activity here in Gillette County, in Campbell County, and help to support our economy here moving forward. I know there's a lot of talk about what the next stages are in our economy, in our community, and this is a potential opportunity to leverage an asset to help create and drive economic activity in the community. And beyond that, there's a number of other non-quantifiable benefits that a facility like this can offer to a community, including quality of life for residents, the iconic, the transformative effect of it. I mean, as we're talking about hospitality, as we're talking the experience, these are things that we can't put dollars to. The new visitation, people coming to Campbell County that otherwise have no earthly business being here. getting to experience a destination, realizing that this is a shopping center, this is a destination, that there are other opportunities here to experience and may create opportunities for them to return in the future. An asset and an investment into the master plan at CAMPLEX can also be an anchor for revitalization, additional private investment into areas around this, realizing that there are pockets of additional people, foot traffic that is being generated by this event facility, creating an opportunity to leverage that from a private sector standpoint are significant opportunities that are not quantified with our numbers before. And overall, this is just a summary of the annual benefits that we would anticipate seeing with investment in the master plan moving forward. I believe is that the last slide that we have? So with that, I believe we've got an open question comment. Aaron, did you want to say anything else before we move into the next phase?
I think we have a microphone up here. Anybody that does have a question, feel free to come up to the front.
Bring it to you.
I got a couple, 3 questions for you. I think it's a real good plan. What I'm struggling with right now is the city and county is always trying to fight the overutilization of our existing sewer and water systems. Well, that's going to have to be rebuilt again or add on to it. There's going to be a cost to the taxpayers to subsidize this for this venture. The other question, where does the capital dollars come from? I don't think the city and county's got in their coffers to come up with this kind of capital money right now to build this. So is that an extra tax on everybody, or where's this come from? That's a huge number you're talking about. So those are questions I think that need to be answered so the community can get behind it. So that's why I would think somebody should come forth before we go any further with this. Thank you.
Comment on the sewer water?
On the sewer and the water, there will be additional demand and utilization of those. We don't anticipate that it would require rebuilding of any major facilities. The city and the county usually do a very good job of planning for the future when they do design their infrastructure. For example, the wastewater lift stations do get designed usually for that 20, 30 plus year lifespan to anticipate growth that we would think this would fit within.
And in terms of your question on how do we pay for this, that's the next stage in this process that we'll be taking a look at. And there are a lot of different options that we've seen from complexes like this throughout the country. Todd and I worked on a project in Louisville, Kentucky last year, where they were looking at roughly an $800 million investment into the Kentucky Exposition Center, the Kentucky State Fairgrounds. That's that example. They're looking to get, and they're getting funding directly from the state to invest into that capital asset that helps drive activity both in Louisville and throughout the state of Kentucky. The Nebraska State Fairgrounds is another great example where they looked at and have received funding from the state of Nebraska to reinvest into their complex, but are also endeavoring upon a fundraising, a capital campaign to generate funds to help make the master plan improvements. There's other examples like Canadian County, Oklahoma, which is just outside of Oklahoma City, that instituted a local option sales tax to help pay for the capital investment. So there's a lot of different options out there for generating revenue to pay for the capital investment that's needed. And ultimately, it's going to come down to what the community is looking to pursue, and importantly, where do we see the benefits, the economic benefits that are going to be generated by this facility, and try and identify those as the sources for funding this. We want to have that, essentially that cyclical economic engine that is being paid into by the users of this complex, local, non-local users of the complex, that are generating revenues that can help to pay for the improvements that are needed and are being used, and the economic drivers that are helping to pay for that asset.
Thank you on that. So in other words, you really don't have a clear plan. You want to tell state how you're going to fund this thing. If you were going to fund this, how would you do it?
There'd be a lot of different ways that we would have to find the funding for a project like this. And until we've got more clear direction on what those opportunities are and where they could come from, it's really difficult to say at this point. But those are some of the conversations that need to be happening here moving forward. What's important to get to this point is an agreement on this plan. If this is the plan that we want to continue pursuing and moving forward with, and if so, then now we start undertaking that process of how do we go about funding it.
Well, my struggle is if you got a long range plan like that, and we see numbers of 275 million, add inflation and cost overruns, that could turn a lot further than that. And that is Campbell County. We're pretty good at doing that. So, I mean, you did a normal Campbell County shuffle. Everybody's been promised something. I've been watching this about 45 years now, and it's a pretty good job at doing that. So, but I mean, it's a good plan. I mean, I've seen these projects before, but Louisville's a community of 750,000 people. Oklahoma City is 550,000. We got 425,000 people within the range of here. If 1% show up every week, that's 4,250 people, whatever. Okay, so you have people coming even further to come to our activities to see this, activities we have here. So I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is kind of a stretch. But I do appreciate your numbers. I mean, they're solid, but I think it's gonna be a challenge for Campbell County.
Well, I'm going to start out with some comments and then I've got a couple of questions. So I can remember when CAMPLEX was built, and at the time it was for the county fair and for horse racing, and nobody envisioned, I don't believe, the events that we see now here in CAMPLEX. I remember when the land board went after, the marketing people went after the National High School Finals Rodeo and got it here. It was amazing. Whoever thought that the National High School Finals Rodeo wouldn't be in Gillette, Wyoming. So when the Wyoming Center was built, you know, you think about how that was going to use. This last winter, we went and watched grandkids play basketball all weekend long, completely full of kids from 8 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night from everywhere. They were here for 3 days. Unbelievable. I know these numbers are shocking, and that's going to be the challenge that we go forward. My idea is this is being presented to us as a community to get our minds wrapped around what's being proposed. The next step will be, how can we pay for this? What's that going to look like? So that's my comments. To me, CAMPLEX has brought so much to our community. And I remember we've got a local business that their marketing plan, their ad is nowhere near CAMPLEX. So it's like that, because that's where everything happens. But anyway, now my question, in looking at the design of the two barns and thinking about having lived in Wyoming all my life and where the wind comes from, I was just wondering about having that open outdoor barn facing the north on those two barns and on the Wrangler Arena. Is there any thought that that could be switched? I mean, that's just a question in my mind, having sat through our wind for many years.
Yeah, it's a
Thank you.
good comment. In fact, it was originally, when it was conceived, it was actually flipped. And it was through discussions with rodeo as well as operations here on campus to flip it back, because we wanted that main indoor arena nearer to the core of the facilities. And as I mentioned, you know, the concept is that we put fabric windscreens and things on it. A great deal of the west side and north side of the building are enclosed with only the lower level open. But yeah, I get that. And we actually, originally the concept was the opposite direction, and then we flipped it to put the main indoor arena closer to that core because it was going to be more heavily utilized and needed proximity to the core paved parking and everything that we're developing. So that could go either way. Again, everything that we've developed so far is very conceptual. And the main point was to try to basically visualize it, have square footage programs so that we could generate, cost estimates and be able to project what those costs would be as well as timelines. So everything shown still has to be designed. Just trying to put forth what the concept ideas are behind the master plan. And also related to the other comment about costs, we were made pretty familiar with how costs go here in Campbell County, at least on this campus, in previous years, like for construction of the Wyoming Center, and the stories around that, and how there was major funding deficiency and things, kind of at the last hour, and it happened, right, but in a painful way. So as we started kind of building out our costs, so we have like every building, every component is individually costed and based on programs, square footage programs that were derived from the concept plans. And then we take spaces like bathrooms, for example, are given a value based on kind of current prices that we know exist in 2023, 2022. So we get hard cost, right, based on actual bids and estimates from real projects. That's our starting baseline. But then what we do is we've got, for particular buildings like the indoor arena, on top of that, we add like specialty AV, for things like a center hung or video boards in the building. We add values for plaza and landscaping and signage that aren't normally part of a building, because we know that's something we want to be part of the project. And what happens is, if you don't put it in the budget now, later on it gets VE'd because it wasn't ever in the budget. They're like, well, we didn't have that. We didn't have landscaping. So then on top of that, we also have a 20% design contingency, because we don't, like I said, the building hasn't been designed, right? So I don't know for sure how it's going to end up. Square footage might be a little higher. Finishes might be a better quality than what I anticipated. So all of that combined creates the hard cost of construction. Okay. Then what we add is we take that hard cost of construction, we add a percentage, which is contractor profit and overhead, bonds. There's a percentage for that, which is basically 15%. We have engineering, design services as a percentage on top of that. And we have what we call a project maintenance and equipment fund. So, and that's typically 10 to 15% of a project. And what that does is it gives us money in the project to be able to buy essential equipment that's not normally part of a general contract for a building. So if we need lifts or portable basketball goals or rodeo pins, we have money in there to cover that. And that's another thing that is often overlooked in these types of projects. We're like, oh, you got a great building, but your equipment in here is horrible. What's it from, was it 30 years old or something? We want to make sure everything's right in these buildings when we open up. And that also gives you, if it's not used for that purpose, it gives a little bit of bank to kind of start taking care of the building and maintaining it properly. So that is the project cost, all of those numbers all put together. And then, for example, like the arenas, we had projected that best case scenario, we would be able to bid and buy those out from a construction manager in 2026, if we're pretty aggressive here. And that is that we have a goal to open the buildings in the winter of 29, 30 or spring of 30. So we escalate that again, which is basically another 5% per year, compounded on top of that actual cost of construction, which is then our resulting budget that I shared with you. So there's a lot of numbers that go into our budgets to make sure that what we're proposing is going to be doable when we reach that point in time.
Todd, if I may add to that, being the executive director of CAMPLEX, knowing the history of the Wyoming Center and moving into this budget process, something that I actually asked the team to do was, please don't hang me with these numbers with whatever you plan for. So if you follow everything he just said, 55 to 60% of the $275 million number that you just heard was Aaron asking them to just jack that number as high as you can make it. Plan, protect, make it really, really high so that no matter what happens, we come in under budget. So it was 5% here, 5% there. You add all those percentages up, it was a 55% of the $275 million number is these contingency fees. Not all of those are that escalation that I was just talking about. A big chunk of that is F&E, the maintenance funds, those kind of things. I think the second key point here would be we don't have a single fund at CAMPLEX other than the remainder dollars, the Wyoming Center. For maintenance. East Pavilion has no way outside of an annual appropriation for the operating cost to maintain it, for me to go be able to fix the rust around all the doors. Okay. So in these numbers, they built that into the potential 275. So in the future, we're also planning to take care of the facility. Something for the first time in the 40 years of CAMPLEX that we'd be planning for.
For three years now, we've had the Gillette Mustangs indoor football team. And I understand from news reports that a couple of the issues that cause them to have to go away now is deficits in the facilities, the ceiling height, and couldn't add the rebound nets. I haven't heard any mention at all of them.
And we did take a look at the potential for some of the minor league or professional sports outside of the hockey program. One of the challenges that historically we have seen when doing studies of this nature with minor league professional sports is the challenge with keeping them around. There's very few markets across the country that are able to retain those organizations, whether it's an owner deciding that they just want to close up shop, they're not making enough money, they get a better deal somewhere else, or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, that's the projections do not reflect activity from the football program for those reasons.
I have a few questions for you. I'm just been elected on the land board, so I'm very unfamiliar with a lot of things that have happened around here. But one of the things I have come to understand is all the events that we have here do not cover their costs. So how do we go about making that adjustment? Because this facility should be able to cover its costs. Whether it creates a profit or not, it's a community facility. I understand that. So on your multi-use barn there, what would your projected cost be, or that we should charge a person coming in to put on an event for that week?
So in terms of covering costs operationally from event facilities like CAMPLEX, there's a couple of schools of thought that go into the pricing model that these facilities undertake. One is this a community asset? Is this something that our taxpayers in the area are already funding or are already paying it, whether from the upfront capital needed to build this facility in the first place, or with the annual subsidy to maintain the complex and its operations? As such, sometimes the cost to rent out that space is reduced or even given away for free to provide a community asset back to area residents. The other school of thought is from an economic side of things, with these events that have multiple facilities that they can choose from to bring their economic impact generating events with hotel room nights, with dollars spent on RVs, RV hookups, and on stalls, and buying dinners at restaurants, on buying gas at the gas station, groceries at the grocery store, driving economic activity. These events realize that in many cases, they hold some sway in terms of the the negotiations on the price points that they are being charged to rent out the space. And therefore the cost to rent out the space oftentimes is reduced for these economic impact generating events. And that is a practice from communities across the country, whether you're talking San Francisco, Las Vegas, or Orlando to Fort Worth or Canadian County, Oklahoma. It is a practice because of the competition that we have for bringing in these economic dollars that are essentially the return on investment that the community makes for subsidizing the operations of the complex. We did take a look at if we were to operate the facility at a break-even rate and increase rental rates. The number that we came up with was somewhere in the realm of 70 to 80% increase in rental rates to break even operationally at this complex. Now, there are a number of other ways that we think that there may be opportunities to reduce the subsidy moving forward that are worth investigating, things like enhancing the food and beverage revenue capture for the complex. But therein lies a challenge because now you're negatively impacting the people that have relied on that from a private sector standpoint to come in and provide the catering and the food service to the events that are coming into CAMPLEX. Taking a look at increasing rental rates for whether local facility users or other outside groups, but now you're reducing the benefit back to the local community and increasing the potential for these events going to other areas. I think it's important to keep your eye on the ball with the pricing and have a variety of different price increases planned for moving forward in the future, as well as incorporating dynamic pricing models so that you can address the ability for these events and event producers to pay a fair amount to cover the cost of operating their events at CAMPLEX. But it's something that needs constant attention moving forward.
Okay, well, we're going to ask the taxpayers to pay for this. And in this community, probably less than 2% own a restaurant, motel, convenience store, or grocery store, or a clothing store. But they will pick up the basic costs of building this facility. Right now, it does not have a sufficient workforce to help maintain this facility. Now we're going to multiply it by about 10 times, and then we're going to have to find a way to have enough funds to pay for that workforce to maintain it. So, I mean, there's lots of moving parts in this project, and I'm just hoping that we're making sure that we do cover all those costs. Because once we build it, we have to maintain it, and we have to have a workforce here to keep it open.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues that are unsolved at this point that need to be very critically considered moving forward. I think you bring up some excellent points, but at the end of the day, the question becomes, what does Campbell County want to be over the next 20 or 30 years? I'll be very honest. I'm coming in from Minnesota, and I would certainly not expect any of y'all to come over to Minneapolis and tell me to get rid of all the hockey rinks that we have over there because, gosh darn it, we love our hockey. But I'm not going to come in here and say, here's exactly what you need to do, and here's how you want to live your lives. Our charge was to tell you, here's what the opportunity is. As a community, as Campbell County, as residents of this area, it's incumbent upon you to, and I appreciate you coming out here and being informed and learning about this project and understanding what the opportunities are and how this could potentially benefit the community. But at the end of the day, it is a community decision, and it's important that you guys have your voices heard.
Hi, I'm Stacy Thar, and I don't necessarily have like a question, but it's just something I want to put out to the community as a user of the CAMPLEX on a production level. There's a lot of costs that I don't think get realized that us as a production company putting on an event in this community that goes back out into the community, whether that be from stock that we're paying stock contractors, that we're paying our local feed store, that we're paying our day work, other just other money that's going out to more people in our community than just us as Star Ranch Productions or just the gas station or just the hotel rentals, that there's a lot of other money that goes back out into our community from just what our business needs from the community to bring the people in to the county. So.
My name's Einer Matheson. I've lived around Gillette for 67 years. And I was in on quite a bit of the thoughts in this when the original projection was to buy this land out here. I don't know what land, it was probably close to 400 or 500 acres. I could be wrong, which was a very good buy for about $4 million. I did a little investigating on this, and I think it's probably directed toward the lady that she might be on the board. Is that the original plan, there was some motorsports designed to fit into some of this. But I have never seen none of that ever happen. Also, I have never been against horse racing, never will be. I like to watch horse races, any kind of racing. My family likes to watch it. But at the time when we brought in this horse racing, Denver, Colorado closed their horse race track in about 1985, 1980. They closed it because they couldn't afford to bring their stalls and staying up to fire code. And we were building one here. And could anybody tell me how many millions of dollars that horse racing cost Gillette, Wyoming, the taxpayers in the last 40 years? I'll bet you it's close to $50 million they've lost. And I'm not, if you want to fact check that, do it. And I'll accept it. What I'm saying is we're projecting more money into a horse track that's not going to make money. It's just going to cost a lot of money just for a few people that like to race them. I'm a drag racer myself, and it was in the projection to start with to have a drag strip out here, but it's never happened. You know what the number one spectator sport in the United States is? Motorsports. Why do we have such a crowd when we have a demolition derby? You can't hardly get in the grandstands. Well, can't. They're sold out the last 2 years. But are we pursuing anything like that in motorsports? We need to do that. If we want to make this thing work and have something pay for it, let's bring something in that pays for it. And I'd like to say, I'm not against, I've been going to fairs and stuff around here all my life. I raced horses over at the other fairgrounds. But you can't just satisfy a few people. It's like you can't build a drag strip and not be able to pay for it. It costs a lot of money to build a good one. And I don't want the taxpayers to pay for it. I'd rather see donations and stuff. But I think the same thing should go with horse racing and things like that. I guess that's all I have to say.
Guess I have to share some concerns about the horse racing as you did. I think I thought was the same thing. But aside from that, you talked about whether you want to provide concessions here or not. I probably won't be involved in the meeting coming forward, so I wanted the land board to kind of hear my perspective. My general perspective is county, any government agency should not be in competition with private enterprise. That means if there's a private enterprise going to provide concessions, it better be a private enterprise. Shouldn't be government. Because how can you compete? How can anybody compete when you got coffers of, taxpayer money? And also, how are you supporting local businesses? If your marketing plan is to say, look at all the economy coming in. Oh, by the way, you can't participate because it's a county agency. I think that would be the wrong avenue to take. And I would not support that as a taxpayer, that attitude, that approach. I'd rather pay the $2 million as a supplement or whatever you projected on there from the property taxes, wherever, sales tax, whatever, than to compete against private enterprise. Government agency should not be in competition. I'm not in favor of the motel being there for that reason. You're getting private enterprise competition at taxpayer expense, with the taxpayer money. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's appropriate. So keep that in mind, I think, as you may go forward. Land board, is just in my perspective, my recommendation, there's something that's competing against with the private enterprise, don't go there. Accommodate it. Because, make accommodations for the concessions to come in and to be able to sell the popcorn and the soda and the pretzels and the hamburgers, etc. Okay. I don't think it's appropriate for us as a county, as a government agency, to be in business. It's not what we're here for. That's not the purpose. And then in terms of the racetrack, you'd have to sit there and say, okay, who's going to see that, utilize that feature? If you can say we've got a broad horizon, fine. But if you're talking 4,000 people, 2 months of the year, it's a lot of money.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about horse racing. Everybody knows with the county, we've had to deal a lot with horse racing lately, but I had a different question, but I will just address horse racing. And let's see, 1999, University of Wyoming did a study for Wyoming Downs track down in Evanston. That was like the only track that was existing at the time. And it bringing in annually, they brought in about 700 horses and it was 6.6 million to the area. The track, I don't know if they did the economics on it, but I can speak to this just because we look at the numbers every year for the budget for CAMPLEX. And actually horse racing here is one of the few things that actually makes money here. The reason is back 20 years ago was because all of the horses, and actually one of our representatives from this county was one of the legislators to write different legislation because we were down to I think 6 register horse racing Wyoming bred horse racing horses in the state, and the actual industry was dying. So what they did is changed it, which they approved all the historic horse racing machines, which you see the OTBs in town. So really, like you say, horse racing is extremely expensive. So what the state of Wyoming did was what many states do is allow the entities to do the off-track betting facilities. And that's why they have the money to fund a lot of these things. And I think is why probably Joel and Todd talked about those types of facilities maybe being actually privately funded, mainly because the state of Wyoming has set it up so actually the horse racing operators have more ability to continue. We're one of the few states, some other states have done this. Colorado now does have some of the similar type of legislation, but it gives those folks the ability to actually run the tracks themselves and pay for it, as well as also pay for Wyoming bred horses to hundreds of thousands of dollars for the breeders. Sheridan, we have people right here in Campbell County actually training those horses here, breeding. Stacy kind of talked about these different things that you don't understand. So I think we had 400 horses here this year at the max. Was it 400? Somewhere like that. So, but lots of local people actually here who live here who are making more of a living doing breeding horses, and people are now trying to bring horses here to breed and raise these race horses. So that's just one of those things that Wyoming did to make horse racing a big deal now. So we have 3 tracks running, and I know there's several cities in the state hoping to actually open their tracks. They need to do a little bit different things legislatively to incentivize it, but thankfully Campbell County was lucky enough to get our track back operating and actually profitable. So, but it doesn't have to do with the horse racing. Yeah. Well, $6.6 million of revenue a year, and the city already probably recouped that since they've been doing it. So for the OTBs. But anyway, my question was, thanks, Todd, Joel, and Jamie. Can you talk about how the potential, or with these facilities, the potential for national sponsors or some of those type of entities in your experience with doing some of these? What type of kind of partnerships do you potentially have you seen in the past, and would be the potential here, knowing that we have some anchor events that may start, and we see that in the Wyoming Ford Center. So I don't know what your experience is at, Joel. That may be a question for you, but what you see potential dollars wise for those types of possibilities. or opportunities?
So having that participation from the private sector, from sponsorship, naming rights, advertising, having that shared marketing opportunity with assets like this is certainly a realistic one moving forward. It is not one that we assumed in our projections because, again, we wanted to be conservative. We wanted to be pragmatic with the numbers that we were projecting out here. But that does present a real opportunity, particularly if you are attracting events like the National High School Finals Rodeo, with the visibility that that has on a national and a regional scale. Things like Little Britches Rodeo or other large events that have a wide rate. Youth and amateur sports is a particular sector that is growing significantly in terms of the scope and scale and visibility of the activities that are being produced around the country, especially as you've got more of these streaming services that each individual team and organization and player have access to. Having naming rights and sponsorships is a tremendous opportunity in terms of the dollars that could translate to. I mean, the biggest ones are going to be those that have the national television rights that have you see in Las Vegas and Denver and Dallas, Fort Worth, places like that have the professional sports teams. But there are real dollars that can be generated in terms of sponsorship and naming rights as adjunct to what we've got going on here.
Yeah, but I think what we see a lot of, particularly in the kind of more agricultural, dirt arena facilities, is like Oklahoma City. We're building a new Coliseum there. It's under construction, and they have a naming right partner that they've sold that is a corporation in Oklahoma that has to remain unnamed for right now. But they're not have nothing to do with agriculture, actually. So, but it's, it's just the scale and importance of the building in that community that attracted that money. But also, they've done very well. For example, like they have an Adequan arena, which a lot of people don't know what Adequan is, but it's a large animal pharmaceutical brand that's very prominent in performance horses. So they're able to leverage those facilities and get those kind of monies. But like, for example, on the Coliseum, what they're using that naming rights money for is not bricks and mortar. As we went through the project, we took out, for example, like the center hung video board, some of the video technology and stuff, and took that out of the general contractors package. And, that's several $1 million. And that's what they're using the private funding to pay for. Because it comes later in the project anyway, and the contractor doesn't bid it until the end of the project, because whatever is available in 2023 when it's bid is basically old technology in 2026 when it's installed. So what we do is we go through and try to identify stuff that makes sense to be paid for with private money. The operator or management of the facility tries to go sell those rights to buildings. We also do in that particular building, just like this one, there's like the club lounge space that's sold independently. We have some suites in there that are sold independently. There's quite a bit of revenue that's generated, but it is an effort that has to be put forth to do it right. And it's normally done by the facility management, marketing, sales group that goes out and pitches it, right? But yeah, I mean, there's potentially some real money there, but again, we're usually not using it to backstop bricks and mortar. It's adding enhancements to buildings that we maybe VE'd out, hoping we could get some sponsorship monies. That's where it's going.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. I think it's been pretty clear and concise. My question goes back to horse racing in the paddock and jockey building. Is there a specific cost just to that building that you guys know of offhand? Because you've said it could or should be paid privately, but at only 16 days of usage, 8 weekends, maybe a week beforehand, a week afterwards, that's 10 weeks. It's sitting there being used. And if it's owned privately, does CAMPLEX have the ability, and maybe that's a question for Aaron, to work out some kind of deal with them that while they're not using it, it could be rented out for some extra income for CAMPLEX? And if it's owned privately, even some kind of a cost split or something where they would get some revenue for renting it out the other 42 weeks of the year. It just didn't show any extra usage. And I know that's because of the racing schedule and such, but that to me is a concern, to have a building that's maybe only being used 10 weeks out of the year. And so I'm just wondering what the cost for that particular building would be, so that we know if there is a private investor out there, and would they be willing to lease it to CAMPLEX for some extra revenue for the county?
Good question. So yeah, that's a project that was in phase 3. So we developed the cost to be escalated to 2029 start date potential for that project. And the total recommended budget was basically right at $4.5 million. So it's not a cheap building, but it includes a lot of landscaping and plaza and utility work and stuff. But yeah, that is one of those components that absolutely has to have a lot of private money, at least a lot of private money, if not all of it involved. As mentioned, though, the horse racing currently is generating revenue to the city and the county and CAMPLEX. So, that's a more concise kind of discussion that has to occur with the racing operator in terms of how much are they, what's the duration of their terms of their agreement to stay here racing, and how much are they going to pay over that term to the city and county, and then how much would they be willing to invest in that capital of that facility if it's that important to them. I mean, they could continue to operate with the kind of temporary setup that they do, but just ideally to kind of have a better racing experience, run a better racing program, and try to also, moving forward, as the horse population continues to grow, the racehorse population continues to grow here in the state, and racing kind of gets back on its feet a little stronger. Where are the best horses going to go? And that also kind of drives where more of the wagers and purse money is going to go. So, I mean, that's a pretty broad discussion to have, but we estimated at 4.5 and would definitely assume there's quite a bit of private capital in that.
Thank you guys for coming and kind of giving us a little information on this, but I've got a couple of questions for you concerning the numbers that you're using there and the population of the areas that you talk about that you've done your facilities at. That is a lot bigger population, in that area than what Gillette, Wyoming is. Gillette, Wyoming, and you're only talking 35,000 people here. And to me, it sounds like you're wanting to put a lot of burden and support from the taxpayers to have to pick up the coughing or the funding for all this project. I mean, all these facilities that you're showing, they look fantastic, but I just can't see Gillette, Wyoming being able to support that, because you're talking the ranch there and right outside of Loveland. You're talking Oklahoma City. You're talking, the national, like in Texas there, where they have the big rodeo and convention and stuff. I mean, that populations in those areas are, 10 times bigger than what they are here in Gillette. Even when you take and use the surrounding areas here, I mean, you're talking areas there that are almost the entire population of what the state of Wyoming is, not just Campbell County. And I'm just curious, how you're justifying the numbers other than put the burden back to the taxpayers here, because we really can't take too much more of this tax. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good comment and question. I think there's a question in there, but good comment anyway. And you're right. You know, you talk about like Oklahoma City or Denver, you know, Denver's, you know, spending $1 billion on the National Western redevelopment, which is kind of mind boggling, right? But you know, if you think back to, all right, so 17 years ago, or, you know, it's longer than it actually, you know, you're looking back like 22 years when the idea for the ranch was coined, right? And they decided to go to the public for their tax, their 20-year tax, which expired and then was renewed in 2019. When you look back at Loveland and Larimer County, Northern Colorado at that time, you know, 23, 24 years ago, it was a vastly different picture. And they embarked on, because we were involved way back then, they embarked on a really aggressive at the time concept of developing that ranch property with the master plan that was far bigger than what that first chunk that they actually developed, you know. And when they took on the Budweiser Center, you know, there was nothing like it of that scale in a community of that size. So, I mean, I liken it to that in that regard, because when you actually look back at Larry, it's been one of the fastest growing counties in the United States now for over a decade. And it has grown like crazy. Property values are insane. Taxes, you know, tax revenues seem like they go on forever. And, you know, what we're embarking on now, you know, is another basically, you know, $250 million of investment in the ranch, just in public money, not to mention the private money. So I do liken it to that, because 22 to 24 years ago, it was very similar. Most of the growth that's occurred in that community has been in the past 2 decades, and in particularly the past decade. And it's also, the ranch has also proven itself over that duration of time that they were paying down those initial bonds, enough so much that the voters went to the polls again and reinstituted another 20 years of that tax to make this investment. Now, I think there's similar components too to this, because for what we're doing at the ranch currently, we have allocated out of the implementation plan moving forward, certain parts of that plan are to be 100% paid for by public funds. Other components, such as the new indoor hockey, you know, 8,000 seat hockey arena, the ice center, the hotel, the conference center, is got to be primarily paid for with private funds. And that's the process we're working through right now with private investors and operators to do that. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is there's opportunity. You know, the county didn't want to compete with private business. So hotel, if it's going to be on or next to the campus, they didn't want to have any business interest in that. And the other thing is that, very simply put, the extension of the tax will not pay for everything that they want to do. So they're having to go to public business to get a lot of that project built. Because in reality, it's more like $500 million is what's going to get added to the ranch. Public money is only going to pay for about half of that, $500 million. So I do liken it to that, because they kind of came from the same place. Now, the probability of the same type of growth occurring here, no, because we're not, 40 minutes north side of Denver, on an urban area that's collapsing inward, and everyone wants to move out. And, we're not going to see property values and residential built like that. Absolutely not going to happen. But we also aren't proposing things of that similar scale we're doing at the ranch currently. The second part was What? What's the second part to your question? Oh, yeah. So that's part of it, right? We don't expect the taxpayer to pay for all of it. And we aren't sure, and you should probably comment on this more than me, but we're not sure exactly at this point, as Joel mentioned earlier, how this gets paid for. But we also, as just another case study, so in Oklahoma City, at the state fairgrounds, there are also two buckets of capital projects. There is an assortment of projects that we have done there and are doing there that come from what they call MAPS projects. Those are metropolitan area projects that are sales tax funded. And the fairgrounds is just one of the site. There's projects all over the city, but some of our fairgrounds projects, such as the Bennett Event Center, which was an exposition center we built like 5 years ago, was built out of that money. However, all of the livestock and horse barns and arenas are paid for out of hotel motel tax. And the reason that is done is because where Oklahoma City, that particular facility generates most of its economic value is from horse shows. Most of the world championship horse shows are held there. It's basically busy every day, right? 3,200 stalls, 9 indoor arenas. Their economic impact comes from people coming to Oklahoma City to show a horse. So the logical place for that to be paid for was by those people or visitors to Oklahoma City. So all of that is capitalized through hotel motel tax. Those facilities that are more utilized by the general public in Oklahoma City, such as the exposition center where they do home and garden shows and car shows, is paid for by sales tax. And that's kind of the way in that community they have determined the best mix of funding that is acceptable to the public. Oh yeah, but the horse track is owned by the it's tribally owned now in Oklahoma. All the tracks are, but the Remington Park in Oklahoma City is owned by the by Global Gaming, which operates the casino there as well. It has no public interface at all.
Yeah, I think Todd summarized it very eloquently, so I don't want to rehash everything that he said, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of conversations that need to go forward with what are the sources, what do we want to ultimately do with this, and how do we want to be when we grow up as a community over the next 20 or 30 years. If we're looking at this from an economic standpoint, if we're looking at this from a community standpoint, we're looking at this from dollars coming in from outside of our community and having a real opportunity to have a signature event, a national event that would call Campbell County home for 10 years and having the dollars that would be spent from outside individuals coming into the community. You're asking the question about, well, is the size of our community able to pay for this? The question that I would ask to you is the size of our community able to turn away something like that? We have to think about it in that sense too, in that from an economic standpoint, are we able to look in other ways to continue to move forward as a community, as an economy? And if do we not want to leverage those dollars that are coming in from outside of the area to help pay for the investment into a community asset that can help with the cyclical benefit of driving more economic activity into the community?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the big picture, and I've worked on bigger projects far bigger than this. All right. In this, what I've developed a new hobby is watching budgets. So this year, county commissioners sat and watched their budget. I know where their tax mill sits. It's almost maxed out. I know 70% of the energy provides your tax base. I know half that's going to go away in the next 12, 15 years, if not sooner. Let's hope longer. Let's hope we get 12, 15 years out of this thing, okay? I watched them try and get money, and I've talked with Aaron, and Aaron and I had a good conversation there, and Aaron understands he has to take care of the buildings. He understands he's trying to increase the CAM-PLEX's opportunities. I get that. sitting there trying to watch the people ask for more money this year, from the fire department to the CAMPLEX to all the services in the community. Some stuff that planning, stuff like that's doing. Right now, it's a stretch to support even what we have now. If we lose that tax base, which everything indicates we will, we'll have to have some of the money come from the CAMPLEX and actually have to take care of itself. And in 20 years after this thing's built, their maintenance cost is going to go up. And I know what you know already, the maintenance costs are 1 to 3% of your project overall a year. 6 to 9%, $6 to $9 million at least, not counting. That's just maintaining the buildings. So as we look out, this is not 2000 anymore. If this was 2000, it'd be a lot different. I feel different about this. But I know in the next 6, 7 years, the number's going to come rolling around, and we're not going to have enough to support anybody in the community. It won't be a 10% cut across. It'll be a triage. It'll be things that will not be done. I hope you guys have a good enough cookie sale to raise the money for this and find some way to get the money out of this without it. Because there's a lot of ideas kicked around how we're going to fund this. You know, there's some things might be, we can raise our tax up, but Campbell County's about shot. They're about at the top of their tax and their valuation. And of course, we're not getting the mind to do it. One is perhaps a sales, some sort of sales tax. So we're at 5% now, plus 1 makes 6. State of Wyoming is also floating a sales tax of 3 to 4%. In the event our incomes, our evaluation bill will drop off next 10, 12 years. They do that, put your sales tax to 10%. Buy your $100,000 vehicle, you get to add another 10% to it. It's $10,000. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the state of Wyoming has reports out there and trying to figure out how much money they're going to lose and how they're going to raise it. A lot of people out there working on how to figure money out. And this, I understand your opportunities you feel you can bring here. State of Wyoming has to bring opportunities also. And it's coming. And we all have to, I think we all have to sit down and accept the fact there's a change coming in our economies. Those who've been here and joined us for over 50 years enjoying this, we wish it was different. We wish we were back in the cold days of 2000 when we had everything going for us. And so I think we just got to be careful. Maybe one of the plans would be is how we actually bring the money back to servicing itself. I mean, we say it's not for profit, but if Campbell County don't start figuring out how to lay its costs down, we're going to be in trouble. The CAMPLEX find some way to put in their model plan to say, hey, you know what? This is a zero cost from Campbell County. It's not a profit and loss. We will carry our entire cost, labor and everything. That would be a benefit to our community. But to say we're going to spend a whole chunk of money, oh, by the way, you got to keep coughing money up for us the next 20, 30 years. And as these buildings get dated, they'll need maintained, as Aaron already knows. Aaron's coming on a short stick of this thing, and it's been probably not near as well done as it should have been the last 15, 20 years. I think you feel that way. I've seen the buildings. So that's just a thought process of the community. It's always just spend somebody else's money as long as it's not yours. But there is a change coming. It's coming in our tax base, and it's coming in our evaluations, coming in our community is going to get through this thing. And, they always talk about population drop. If this does happen, we've maintained 40,000 people roughly the last 3 years, 300 or so. I mean, that's a number of perhaps we would need to see increase to keep this thing going. But if we do lose population, that's going to put a bigger strain on our taxes. So I'm just not being negative here. Some of the people working on development of industry and developing the economy in this community is working hard at it at all levels. We're at the federal level trying to figure out how to get this thing where it's got to bring more money in. So I would say probably the most thing about this project is you're about 20 years too late. But I appreciate it. Thanks. It's well done. Well done engineering.
Well, I'll keep this short because I'm kind of one of them guys that's different than everybody else. Because I know a year ago I was asked, so why don't you run and be a commissioner? I thought, well, what the heck? Might as well. I don't think anybody will vote for me, but I'm an optimist, so I'll try. Guess what? Here I am. So I am an optimist. And I thought your presentation was very good. And I'm for all of it. When I go downtown, I have to wait on traffic now everywhere I go. There are so many people coming here that this place is going to change. Because if you think Hewlett and Moorcroft and Gillette are all going to stay, the same population that they are now, you better have another thing coming, because they're coming out of the cities. They're coming here and they do have money. Now, the CAMPLEX is going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to stop giving this stuff away for free all the time and being so cheap with things. And I don't want to put the people that have events, you know, so expensive that they can't do them. But this school system has a lot of money and they come and use our stuff for free, which, well, kids are worth it. Obviously, you know that. But we can make some adjustments and have this thing make a little more money. I'm an optimist. I don't think the coal's going to go away, and I don't think the oil is. I think we're going to keep at least staying even with that. And so, you know, I'm looking for somebody to help encourage everybody else that this thing might work out all right if we have enough faith in ourselves, because we always seem to be able to do it. This community's pretty good about that. So thank you.
With that, I'm going to try to bring it to a close because your time is valuable. I will add, I suppose, briefly that when I joined CAMPLEX, I was scared to death of Kelly McCreary. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? And tough guy, but he's a softie, right? To end where we began, I think is important here. Whether you believe in public-private partnership, is a hotel on site an up or down issue? What gets interesting is it a private entity that we just take 20% off the top? Still private, we're generating revenue. I think there's lots of solutions that we have to have space to solve and identify the needs and then try to seek to solve them. Good pragmatic approaches to very real problems. I would agree that I don't know that coal's going away, but I think energy production locally from coal is changing very legitimately. I don't think there's any surprises there. So does that mean CAMPLEX should do nothing? And we go through what they identified as, if you don't invest in it, the product that we're selling gets more tired than it already is. Therefore, it starts to cost us more to operate. What is the level of investment and all those things that go into it? So lots of really sophisticated problems. And I don't know that we can solve any of them without a common vision. So if you're from the city, elected, appointed, or otherwise, we do need your help to identify what the purpose of CAMPLEX is. Until we solve that, we probably shouldn't be trying to seek to raise $275 million from a special cap tax, right? From the county, however we want to try to play the game. The truth of the matter is we just actually have to get to one playing field so that we're all working from one rule book. Because as long as the rule book is different, nobody's happy. And 10 years from now, somebody's going to be saying, do you remember when they promised this, and we got this? We have to stop that cycle. And it's been a very long cycle here in Campbell County. So with that, I don't have the solutions, but I know that you have the vote. And I think you just have to show up and vote, up or down. If you have me, I'm going to be here. Give me the horse to ride. I'll ride the horse. But somebody has to make some decisions. And we're probably not all going to be happy one way or the other. Yeah, no, you're fine. But we're going to wrap up right at this. So you got the last moment, you get the punctuation.
Here, that's drivers. Do us a favor. Don't lie to us. Don't play this game. Oh, we're going to vote for this. And 5 years down the road, oh, by the way, we got to do this. And we're going to say, wait, we don't want that. And they'll say, well, no, you voted for it. That's the Campbell County way. Lay all the cards on the table up front. Let the people live with them is what you get. Just going to keep changing the game as it goes down the creek. It's been going way too many years for all of us to hear this. We've been down this road, and I don't think you're going to do that to us, Aaron. But I do appreciate your efforts. Thanks. Thank you.
All right. And I guess we should also say we didn't hire you so you could come be lobbied at with missiles. The land board, when this originally started out, it was a long process. It took a very long time to get a contract figured out, to the point that it was almost not even going to happen. What was the read that I had? And high school rodeo didn't drive the boat. It was actually an add-on at the end. So the master plan and coming up with what is our future, all of this sort of came together in a very fluid way. And so irregardless if we love the plan, we hate the plan, I think we owe you a bit of gratitude for putting up with a young executive director. There's no dumb question, but I think I proved that wrong with you guys. I've asked a lot of them. So thank you to you. And I hope that they would give you just a big round of applause and thank you.
We appreciate that, Aaron. Yeah, it almost didn't happen. Part of it was they didn't have a general manager, which we kind of said, you know, we don't want to go through this process if you don't have a general manager, because we've all got to be on the same page here. And if we don't understand how the place operates and how you want it to operate, then, you know, the master plan is futile. You know, one thing to keep in mind when you look at the master plan, when you look at it later online, whatever, you know, what makes a master plan great is that it can adapt over time. You know, it's possible that part of what we conceived may not happen, or something may happen in its place, right? Once we get past like phase 1 or phase 2. But I think the master plan is very adaptable, such as like if horse racing did go away, the facilities are all still pretty tight knit, workable. You know, that's one of the biggest challenges on your site to work around from a planning perspective, is that racetrack. In fact, we tried to move it and Aaron wouldn't let us. Like, he threw a fit. Like, this thing's in the wrong place, man. Of course, it wasn't, you know, 20 years ago when it was built, or longer. But you know, today it's not ideal. But I think the master plan is pretty solid. It's adaptable. It can have a hotel, it cannot have a hotel. It can have the ice center, it cannot have the ice center. But I think there's some key takeaways from Joel's work and our work. There are some key markets that are potentially very profitable and will help the CAMPLEX generate more revenue, also generate more impact to the community. You know, it's those flat floor spaces. The you know, at least developing one nice indoor arena, which this complex has never had, and is like kind of the iconic element of most facilities like this, is that nice performance arena where you can do the concerts, tractor pulls, motocross, you know, rodeo. I think those components are pretty solid. You know, related to how other components are developed, where exactly RV happens. You know, we talked about several locations for the Wrangler Arena on the campus. We picked what we thought was best, but in the end, it may end up somewhere else. But the great thing about a good plan is that it's adaptable over time. And I think that's really necessary. And I don't think the CAMPLEX really ever had a master plan. I think things kind of just happened. At least it sort of appears that way, the way back of houses and parking, where parking is and things. So we've tried to make sense out of it. And, you know, I fully anticipate that things will change. Whether we start next year developing a first phase, or if it's 2 or 3 years or 5 years from now, I suspect things in the plan will change for the better. And designs might change, capacities might change, but I think you've got a pretty good, solid vision to move forward with. And we appreciate the opportunity to come here to Gillette and be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes that can be out of trouble.